asked you about the Lewis case.
Yes, Senator.
Okay, and I want to circle back on that for just a moment because, and he asked you about the bond. I want to ask you about the speedy trial. You had talked about that you felt like the speedy trial clause applied on this, but he had been held for 2 years, and the Supreme Court had already held that you could go to a 7-year detention without a violation on that. So explain to me your analysis of why the speedy trial clause required you to release Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Senator. Anytime that I consider bond, I consider the U.S. Constitution, the South Carolina Constitution, and the South Carolina bond statute. And in that case, once again, the defendant appeared before me, I believe it was 18 months or 2 years prior, and when he appeared before me, I did, in fact, deny his bond. He appeared again, I think, before maybe 18 months later, and at that point in time, the state was missing evidence. There was violations of discovery issues. There was a previous court order in which the state was ordered to try the case, and they had not and could not give sufficient reason as to why they did not try it. And
so that was your premise.
Based on the totality of everything that was before me.
All right, but then, you know, he was charged with attempted murder of the 2 police officers after this release, and he used a child as a human shield. So do you regret this decision?
Thank you, Senator. Once again, I based my decision on the facts that I had before me. The defendant was alleging a violation of his speedy trial rights and a violation of the court's previous order. Once again, there is missing.
You're not answering me. Do you regret the decision? If you had it to do over, would you do something differently?
Thank you, Senator. Once again, I based my decision on the Constitution of the United States.
Okay. Let me ask you about Troy Stevenson. He was a defendant charged with first-degree burglary, and you released him on bond, and he subsequently was involved in the murder of a woman who was working at a bakery, and he had a history of engaging in burglary, hung around with the gang, owned a variety of guns, openly admitted to using drugs. And when you take all of this together, and that's information that you had, these factors show that he was a danger to the community. So how do you justify your decision to release him on bail despite these indications, because that is information that you had?
Thank you, Senator. And respectfully, when Troy Stevenson appeared before me, he was a juvenile. He did not have any criminal record. He appeared before me. His co-defendants who were juveniles were released to their parents. They were not detained. He appeared before me because of his age at that point in time, but he did not have a criminal record. Those charges were subsequently dismissed against him, and my understanding from the record is that he was charged for murder. I did not try the case, but he was found not guilty of those charges on the murder charges also.
All right. My time is about to expire. I do want to ask you about South Carolina versus Statton. You reduced the sentence of a convicted murderer from the mandatory minimum sentence of 30 years to 28 years. And under South Carolina's mandatory minimum statute, a defendant convicted of murder must serve at least the mandatory minimum of 30 years and cannot receive any reduction of that sentence. So given the plain language of that statute, did your decision to reduce this sentence violate South Carolina's sentencing law?
Thank you, Senator. So, Mr. Stanton appeared before me upon the motion of the state. At the time that he appeared before me, he was detained, and I believe he still is detained at the Department of Corrections. The captain of the Department of Corrections petitioned the court along with the state asking for a reduction in his sentence based on his substantial assistance to the Department of Corrections in handling issues of gang violence. And I believe the captain's exact words was that he unequivocally saved the lives of correction officers at the Department of Corrections in assisting them. And so that motion was brought before me upon the motion by the state. The state statute says that the only way that a motion of that type can be brought before the court is by the prosecutor. And at that point in time, after considering everything that was before me, including numerous letters from the Department of Corrections, I found that it was appropriate based on the statute and everything that I had before me.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And thank you for your and your family's record of exceptional public service to the people of South Carolina and to our nation. And I just want to say how proud I am to be on this committee talking to these nominees, including most prominently yourself, who really look like America. They're among our best of the legal profession in America, and I strongly hope that you will be confirmed during this session. The chairman has done an absolutely masterful job of enabling us to reach as many nominees as possible, and I thank him for his leadership. But you have, as he said, the whole package. And I think you've handled the questions here with extraordinary insight and grace. I want to ask you about your experience in the Attorney General's office in South Carolina, most particularly in your serving as the state's Violence Against Women prosecutor. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your experience in that role, whether you think that violence against women is a continuing problem based on your experience since then and during that time.
Thank you, Senator. I was hired by the then South Carolina Attorney General to handle violence against women cases, prosecuting cases all around the state, to assisting law enforcement in training in prosecuting cases. I handled a number of trials, a number of guilty pleas, instructed law enforcement regarding or trained law enforcement regarding the cycle of violence and how to respond to domestic situations. And I guess to answer the second part of your question is that I don't have any statistics as to violence, but I think at the time when I was hired, South Carolina may have been number 1 or 2 in the country of men who killed women. And so that is why our state legislature set aside money for a specialized prosecutor to handle those cases. In answering the second part of your question, I'm not sure as to where we are right now in the state, but I do know that it is still an issue.
I think our experience nationwide is that the numbers of domestic violence cases has increased, some say because of the anxiety and stress of the pandemic. There may be other reasons as well. We reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act. As you know, I was proud, along with other members of this committee, to be a leader in that effort. And in Connecticut, we have seen the same kind of increase in numbers of cases. So I hope that you will bring to bear, as a member of the United States Court of Appeals, your insights and experience as a prosecutor of those kinds of cases, because I think that our judiciary needs to be attuned to it as well. I want to ask you finally about access to our justice system based on income level, race, ethnicity, do you think there continue to be disparities in the equality of access to our justice system?
Thank you, Senator. I'm not sure if I'm in a position to be able to answer any question regarding any disparities. I do know in South Carolina that we have our court and our Supreme Court is looked at the issue of access to justice, and that we have a commission that studies access to justice.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Benjamin.
Good morning.
Good morning. There has been considerable discussion nationally about policies of Democratic district attorneys and Democratic judges releasing violent criminals.
बाकी मोर मनवा में ये बात लालसा पाठ कर बोली घर धैले बानी कालसा बाकी मोर मनवा में ये बात लालसा मैया के मनवा मोहेला चुनरिया लाले लाल हो मैया के मनवा मोहेला चुनरिया लाले लाल हो घुमा दे सैया घुमा दे सैया हमरा के कलकत्ता के पंडाल हो घुमा दे राजाऊ हमरा के कलकत्ता के पंडाल हो चाट छोला खाइल जाई सेल्फी खिंचाई हो भर मिला हाथ धके साथ घूमल जाई हो चाट छोला खाइल जाई सेल्फी खिंचाई हो भर मिला हाथ धके साथ घूमल जाई हो पूजा के बेरा मंदिरिया पो लागेला बड़ी कमाल हो पूजा के बेरा मंदिरिया पो लागेला बड़ी कमाल हो घुमा दे राजाऊ हमरा के घुमा दे पियाऊ हमरा के माऊ के पंडाल हो घुमा दे सैया हमरा के बलिया के पंडाल हो लालू सोल्जर चली ना बहाना हर साल लेखा अब की करी हो न माना PS लालू सोल्जर चली ना बहाना हो हर साल लेखा अब की करी हो न माना मेला कुआर 𝐒𝐇𝐀𝐌𝐄 में लागेला हर एक साल हो घुमा दे सैया हमरा के और पटना के पन्ना